everyone, welcome back to This Book Belongs to Pam, and today we're going to be talking about books that will make you fall in love with reading all over again. When I think about books that make me fall in love with reading all over again, there are three or four things that I'm really looking for. One is a very engaging, can't stop reading, at the edge of my seat kind of plot where I just want to keep on reading. It's a kind of book where you're reading, you look up, it's 3 in the morning. Two, I am looking for books that make me feel things, tug at my heartstrings, make me cry, make me laugh, make me sad. Like something that's just gonna give me strong emotions. And third, I want a book where the writing is just so incredibly beautiful that I just want to highlight it. It's the kind of writing where you just want to tattoo it on your skin. And lastly, I'm looking for books with very immersive world building, well written characters, and just generally a story that I want to know the ending to. So you might think, oh, isn't that like typical of all good books? I'm not looking for a book that has all four of those qualities, because then that would be like a 5, 6, 10-star book. But if a book has one of those qualities, I'm kind of guaranteed that I'm gonna have a good time reading it. So in this video, I'm gonna be recommending you books that fall into at least one of those categories. If you're looking for a book that will get you over that reading slump, well, you're in luck because that's this video. First category is just a plot that is so engaging that you just want to keep on turning the page, keep on reading, you're at the edge of your seat, you want to know what happens next. A genre that lends well to that kind of expectation is the mystery thriller genre. So it's no surprise that the two books I'm going to be sharing are both in those genres. The first one being Behind Her Eyes by Sarah Pinborough. I read this book I think around 2 years ago and I'm still obsessed with it. This book also has a TV adaptation, so if you love the book and you want to take it further, you could also watch a show, which was also really good and even a little bit better than a book in my opinion. So in this book, we are following two characters and two timelines. The two characters that we're following are Louise and Adele. So Louise is a woman who is working as a secretary for a clinic, a doctor's office. One day at a bar, she meets a guy, a very handsome, very enthralling, very charismatic guy. They have a good time, they have lots of laughs, they have a couple of drinks, they make out. They were almost they were this close to taking things a step or two further, but they stopped. So the next day, Louise goes into her office, and who would have thought the guy she met at the bar, he's her new boss. But that's not where all of this messiness stopped. She meets a woman, she's so pretty, she's so elegant, she's so regal. She befriends her. They start hanging out together. Her name is Adele, by the way. And it turns out Adele is the wife of that guy. Our girl Louise has really not been doing great. Given all of that messiness, she kind of starts to notice things about both Adele and the guy, which I keep forgetting the name of, David, that aren't really adding up. Adele seems like this super scared, super reserved person because of David. Adele says that David is this controlling man, that he is not who he seems. But then Louise is starting to develop certain feelings for David, and everything that she's experiencing is a direct opposite of what Adele is telling her. So she's confused, and then she's in this love triangle that only she knows exists. And that is where the story begins. This is a mystery thriller, so something mysterious is happening, and it definitely kept me at the edge of my seat. Did not know where anything was going. I was so surprised by the ending, but also it made so much sense. And then the entire time that I was reading this book, I was just like,
oh my gosh, what's happening? Oh my gosh, Louise, are you gonna be okay?
I was so worried, and then at the same time, I'm trying to figure out what's going on. So good. This book is so good. I actually have a vlog where I read this book. That was the vlog where I was trying out thrillers. So if you want to see more of my real-time thoughts about this book, I will link that vlog below. But yeah, this is my first recommendation, Behind Her Eyes by Sarah Pinborough. The next book that I want to recommend, I don't have a physical copy of yet, and that is None of This Is True by Lisa Jewell. I read this year. Yeah, I read it this year. And oh my gosh, this book just, I, no words. So, what is this book about? We are following Alex and Josie, who are birthday twins. What that means is that they have their birthday on the exact same day and year. And they meet at this bar when they were both celebrating their, I believe, their 45th birthday. Alex is this very girl boss woman who knows what she wants, has really created a good life for herself, has a family that loves her and adores her, and she's just having the time of her life. She runs this podcast where she interviews women who, similar to her, have like made it in life. Now, Josie, on the complete opposite side of the spectrum, is a woman who married so early. Like, she married so early, and the guy that she was married to is way, way, way older than her. And so this has created a lot of problems for her family life, her relationships. They never really seem to be on the same page. She's always feeling like she doesn't belong where she is. She feels like she's destined for more, and she's just stuck in this life that she has been living. So when she sees Alex in that bar, she kind of has this epiphany that she could be more. She could just glow up, essentially. So she approaches Alex and she essentially pitches this concept of a podcast. Instead of interviewing women who've already made it, what if we create a podcast where you could watch my progress as I evolve into this woman that I know that is in me, this woman who has her shit together? What if we do that? And Alex was ecstatic. She loves this idea. It's very fresh, very new. So they set off and start this podcast. So while they're doing this podcast, they're getting to know each other. Alex is asking about her life, her background, her family, like what she's been through, and just setting the tone for the podcast. But during the course of this, I guess, interviews and podcast recording sessions, she starts to piece together things about Josie's life that aren't just making sense. She starts to wonder if Josie is even telling the truth. Josie is painting this very grim past, and we don't really know if she's telling the truth. We are like reading this from Alex's and Josie's perspective, so we never really know if Josie's actually saying things that actually happen, or maybe she's exaggerating things, or maybe she has like a different perspective on it. Because Alex is obviously interviewing people in Josie's life, and nothing is just adding up. And then on top of that, she kind of feels like Josie has this sort of obsession with her and her life. Now, while we are following that, there are, like, I guess, moments where we read about this Netflix documentary that is essentially documenting the making of this podcast, because apparently there were deaths, there were murders, and we don't really know the who, what, when, where, how. Like, while we're reading this book, we know at the back of our head, okay, somebody's gonna die, somebody is gonna kill someone, and we don't know who, we don't know how, and we're just reading about these two women. And because we know the title is None of This Is True, we kind of doubt everything that we read. This book is kind of like a quiet thriller. This one kind of creeps up on you. It's just that kind of book that just makes you want to read more and more, because you want to know, okay, what is the truth? I love this so much. Now, this book is dark, very dark, so definitely check trigger warnings before you deep dive into this book. But if you are okay with those warnings, I really recommend reading this book. I think this is the kind of book where there's a lot of discussion that can be had, and that just makes the reading process so much more enjoyable. I will say, though, there is a bit towards the end that I did not like, which is why this was not a 5-star read for me. I feel like the way that this specific sensitive topic was discussed at the end made it kind of flimsy. Just a word of note, so that's something that's gonna happen towards the end. But aside from that, this book is such a good read. Definitely kept me turning the pages, and I devoured this in like 1 or 2 sittings. So yeah, that is None of This Is True by Lisa Jewell. So the next category that I had was books that just have really good writing that really hits you hard, and writing that you just want to share. So I have 2 books for you in this category, and the first one being The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. I always don't know how to classify it, but it's definitely a fantasy book that has a little bit of like historical fiction elements to it. This book starts in the year 1714 in France, and we are following a girl named Addie LaRue. Now, Addie is obviously a girl who doesn't have a lot of say in the society because of, it's 1700s. Women have no rights. And women are just expected to stay at home, marry someone, serve their husband, live their life that way. But Addie is different. She is an explorer. She's an adventurer. She's a creative. She wants to know more about life. She's so curious about life. And this destiny that the world has decided for her is just not something that she's interested in. So she inadvertently makes a deal with the devil. So yes, this is a Faustian story, so that she can just escape this arranged marriage that has been forced upon her. Unfortunately, she did not word that request clearly enough and ends up living forever. So she is immortal. But the catch is that she cannot do anything, say anything, create anything that's gonna leave an impression. Which means that nobody remembers her. Anything that she creates just disappears. She's just going through life without anyone remembering her. 300 years has passed since that deal, and she's in New York. She's doing the thing that she does where she's just, trying to find a place to sleep for a night, because this is something that I don't really think about. But if nobody remembers you, how are you gonna lease an apartment when your landlord's not gonna remember that you had this whole agreement? Anything that she signs her name on, like paperwork, disappears because she can't leave an impression. Like, literally cannot leave any kind of impression. So she's like doing her thing, sneaking into houses, and it starts with a really gut-wrenching scene of her in bed with someone. And when that person wakes up, that person doesn't really remember who she is. But they had such a great time the night before. They had such a connection. And apparently, they've been doing this every day. This tango, meeting for the first time, being attracted, sleeping together, waking up and forgetting, and then just doing that thing all over again. That's Addie's life. That's her curse. That's her fate after that deal with the devil. However, one day, one fine day, this one man, Henry, remembers her. So that's like the gist of The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. And this book is so beautifully written. Like, I have so many tabs. Like, do you see that? I have so many tabs in this book just because the way that V. Schwab writes is just so visceral. I feel like I can feel what Addie's feeling, and it's just it's so heart-wrenching. And one of the things that I love the most about V. Schwab's writing is that it's so visual in a way. Like, you could really feel yourself in the setting that she is painting. This one is mostly set in New York, like the present day timeline is set in New York, and I have never really wanted to go to New York, but after reading this book and how V. Schwab and Addie LaRue sees New York, I'm like, I need to go to New York, and I need to experience this for myself. And she's just really good at romanticizing life, which is something that I still appreciate. I feel like there's a time and place for us to romanticize things, and this book is really good at doing that. The only caveat with this book is that it is pretty long and it's pretty slow. It's the complete opposite of the first category, where the plot is just moving so fast that you are like at the edge of your seat. This one, it's like a slow, simmering story. It's not the kind of book that you read if you want like something fast-paced, but it's the kind of book that you read if you want to like really be immersed in a world and just feel things. This book will make you feel things. So yeah, I really love it. I highly recommend it. V. Schwab's The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. I guess continuing on with gut-wrenching fantasy books, I have for you my favorite book of 2023, and it is none other than A Dowry of Blood by S.T. Gibson. This book is so good, so powerful, and I highly recommend that you read it if you're looking for really good writing, like really good, powerful writing. Now, this is a vampire book. We are following Constanta. She is this girl turned vampire. It's a letter to the man that turned her. We don't really know his name. And it's just detailing the life that she has had, what she has felt during her time with him, in terms of him being the one who turned her into a vampire, him being the one that provided a life for her, and him being the one who caged her. It's a story about relationships and abuse in relationships, a story about how women have often felt gaslighted by men. This is written in second person, so you really feel her emotions. It's like she's ripping her heart out and just offering it to you, because she's like really bearing her soul, and she's doing it without asking for forgiveness. And I really love that. And I think this is such a powerful book to read if you want really that cathartic feeling of putting into words things that a lot of women, and especially women in abusive and controlling relationships, have felt for a long time and just not able to articulate. So yeah, this is such a good book, but obviously it's a very dark and heavy book. So do check out trigger warnings and make sure that you're ready for it. I absolutely love this. I adore this so much, and it's a book that I feel like I'm gonna keep on rereading. So yeah, that is A Dowry of Blood by S.T. Gibson. The next category that I want to talk about are books that just elicit a certain feeling from you. So I know that the previous set of books also do that, but in a more like gut-wrenching, heart-wrenching kind of way. This category is just the kind of books that a little bit more light-hearted, but still able to bring out emotions of joy, of sadness, of longing, of love. So we are going to be talking about two romance books that has really been my absolute favorites to read. So the first one is a book that I always recommend when someone asks me for a beginner romance book. Of course, it is The Deal by L. Kennedy. The Deal is a hockey romance, which is essentially just a romance book with a hockey component, like hockey players. And we are following Hannah and Garrett. They both go to Briar University. Garrett is the captain of the hockey team for Briar U, while Hannah is an up-and-coming artist. She is a singer, and unfortunately, she also has some personal trauma. There is a little bit of a trigger warning here, so do check that before reading this book. We are just following a very typical, predictable, Hallmark-esque rom-com plot. There's nothing complicated about this. There's nothing groundbreaking about this, but what makes this a really good read is just that it is fun. It is lighthearted. It's gonna give you butterflies. Garrett and Hannah, the way that they come together and the way that their relationship flourish, and all of the cheeky little banter, all of the slightly spicy scenes. This is not super spicy, but all of those really evoke emotion out of you. And I just find myself like really laughing, giggling, a little bit sad at some part. I just really went for a ride. The writing is quite simple, and that makes it really easy to like binge read. And I could read this book in one sitting. So yeah, I highly recommend this one if you just want a very fast-paced romance book that is just gonna give you the feels. Yeah, that is The Deal by L. Kennedy. Now, let's take it up a notch and go the more literary route. I want to recommend 7 Days in June by Dia Williams. This is my favorite romance book of all time. I have not read a romance book that has topped this book for me yet. In this book, we are following Ava and Shane. They're both authors, but they write very different things. Ava is an author of this long series of vampire and werewolves, something like that, erotica novels. And she is the type of author to have like fan meetings. She releases a book every year. She has a newsletter. She has a Facebook group, all of those things. She does all of those things. And she has a very dedicated following. On the other hand, Shane is this more enigmatic, mysterious author. He's the type to like write a book and then disappear for 10 years. He doesn't do interviews, he doesn't do any conferences, he doesn't do talks. He just writes a book, drops it, disappears. One day, they have a chance meeting at a conference, and we find out that that is not in fact the first time that they're meeting, because they have met before and have spent 7 days in June. It's kind of like a second chance romance-esque, but not really. And I just really love how this book is so complex, but at the same time so relatable. And it's so easy to get lost into their story, because the way that Tia Williams tells her stories is just something that you just want to keep on reading. This book can also be part of that books with great writing, because this has really good writing and really quotable lines. The thing that made me really enjoy this book is just that it's very holistic. We're not just following this couple in this very idealistic bubble. They just have this conflict that they have to resolve and it's happily ever after. It's not like that. It's more realistic in a sense that it takes into account all of the different facets of life and how that affects a relationship, and really how they work through those relationships. It's not an explicit book, but it's so damn sexy and hot. That's just hats off to great character writing by Tia Williams, because these two characters, I love them to death, and I just love this book so much. So if you're looking for a more adult and literary take on romance that has really good writing, amazing characters, and just really compelling storytelling, highly recommend 7 Days in June by Tia Williams. We have made it to the final category: books that have really immersive world building, well written characters, and just really engaging plot. And you will not be surprised that my 3 recommendations for this category are all fantasy books. I love a good fantasy story, but there are a lot of fantasies that are a lot harder to get into than others. So I want to recommend to you books that I found really engaging, that just made me want to keep reading and just get lost into this new fantasy world. The first one is a standalone fantasy, which is always good. It's kind of intimidating to start a series when you're already slumping or you're already feeling a little bit apprehensive about reading. So standalones are perfect for this, and I am recommending Sorcery of Thorns by Margaret Rogerson. Margaret Rogerson is an author that is an auto-read author for me, because she just writes really good standalone books. So all of her books are standalones. Technically, there's a novella that follows the events of this book, but you can read it on its own. This is one of my favorite fantasy books of all time, just because of how well developed it is and how endearing the characters are, and she did it all in just one book. Look at all the tabs that I have for this book. I just love this so much. I guess before I get lost into my recommendation, so Elizabeth is a girl who grew up in a library, and she is a librarian, I would say. Her job is a caretaker of books. She is tasked with making sure that the books, which are magical books, they're called grimoires, they're books that have life in them and magic, and she is tasked to ensure that they are taken care of. Cleaning the books, making sure they don't get book lice, making sure that they are dusted, that they have what they need, because some books need food, some books need like oil and stuff like that. These books are like pets. And she is tasked to take care of the books in this great library. One day, something unfortunate happens, and a grimoire, the magical books, has evolved into this monster. So there are different classes of books, and there are books that are really dangerous, that are kept really under lock and key, but somehow this book got released and evolved into this monster that's gonna be killing people. So she fights off this monster, and unfortunately at the end of this whole scenario, she was accused of being the person who set this grimoire free. She has been taken to the capital to answer for her crimes, essentially. In this whole fiasco, she meets a sorcerer named Nathaniel Thorn, and they are stuck together until Elizabeth faces this trial. But it seems like there are a lot more sinister things happening behind the scenes, and they start to try and figure out what the heck is going on. So I know that I didn't really do a good job at summarizing this, but think about books that are magical, a girl who lived her whole life in the library, a sorcerer who has a cat that turns into a butler. Sorcerer of Thorns. I don't know, I just really love this because of the world building. It really did a great job at creating this brand new world with really immersive storytelling, and the characters are so endearing. I love all of the characters in this book, like Elizabeth, Nathaniel, Silas. They are the best characters. I think this is really good if you're slumping, because it's a one and done. It's a one complete story that will have you really flipping through the pages, and you will come out of it with a really good fantasy story, and amazing characters that you are now obsessed with. So yeah, highly recommend Sorcery of Thorns by Margaret Rogerson. The next book that I'm gonna recommend is the first book in a duology, and it is the darling of BookTube and Bookstagram and BookTok. Everybody loves this book. I think most people love this book. And bonus, this is also the book that got me reading again. Like after I read this book, it just started all of this. I read this book and I could not stop reading after that. It's none other than Six of Crows by Lee Bardugo. You have this book to thank for my BookTube channel. If you enjoy my BookTube, you have to thank this book because this is the book that started it all. What is this book all about? We start in a place that is considered the criminal underbelly of their world, and it is called Ketterdam. Everything that happens in there, all of the nightclubs, all of the poker clubs, all of the restaurants, it's just being controlled by different gangs. And one of those gangs are the Crows. The Crows have this guy, Kaz Brecker, as their leader. And Kaz is this well-known, feared criminal, I guess, mastermind in this underworld, but he's also well respected. And now one day, Kaz is presented with a mission, if you will, a potential heist that could essentially change his life. So he builds a team of 6 to embark on this heist, and that is the start of the story. This book, my gosh, it is so good. It is so good at world building. You have 6 really well developed characters. You have found family. You have a really engaging plot. It's a heist. And it's all in this fantastical world. So Lee Bardugo did such an amazing job at introducing this new world. Well, new to the people who read this, because technically this is part of the Shadow and Bone universe, and it's a trilogy that was written before Six of Crows, but you do not need, I actually advise you against reading that trilogy. You can just jump straight into this book like I did, because you will enjoy your experience so much more. And she just did world building so well, because it wasn't a lot of exposition, it wasn't a lot of like info dumping, even if we're trying to learn about the magic system, trying to learn about the countries, trying to learn about the politics. She did it in a way that is just well integrated into the plot and into the character building, that you just don't get bogged down by that. You just keep on reading, you can imagine everything in your head, and you're just following along with the 6 goofy characters that all have very distinct personalities and skill sets and the way they talk and their humor. I don't know, it just has this warm and fuzzy feeling because it's a found family book, and you just want to root for the success of every single person in this book. And obviously you have that heist plot, so you're at the edge of your seats trying to find out if they're gonna actually pull off this heist. It is a duology, so a little bit of a step up from standalone fantasies, but I still highly recommend this one, and you will not regret reading it. So yeah, that is Six of Crows by Lee Bardugo. The final book that I want to recommend to you is my favorite book of all time. Like literally my favorite book of all time. This, I hesitate a little bit to recommend it because the theme of this video is books that will make you fall in love with reading again. Now the book that I am gonna recommend next is a really good book. It's a trilogy and it's really good, but I do understand that it might not be for everyone. But I will throw my hat in the ring and hope that this book is for you. The book that I'm talking about is Jade City by Fonda Lee. This is the first book in the Greenbone saga. It is amazing. If you're looking for a book that has really well-rounded characters, fantasy that is rooted in reality and real cultures, and just amazing plot and political intrigue, this book is for you. Now, I understand that that's not for everyone, which is why I'm hesitating, because if you say bad things about this book, I will cry. So don't do that in the comments. If you don't like it, just What is Jade City about? In Jade City, we are in the country of Kekon, which is ruled by essentially two clans, the Mountain Clan and the No Peak Clan. In this world, jade is power. Jade is magic. So they don't have magic per se, but they have people who can harness the magic of jade. So that is where the fantasy element comes to play. So it's not a completely different world. It's essentially kind of like Earth. You have all of the technology, all of the everything of Earth. So in this book, we are following this family who are the heads of one of the clans called the Nopi clan. Now, the Nopi clan is this very old clan that has survived generations after generation, and we are now in present modern day after the war era. We are following this family as they try to transition from being a clan in a country that is at war to a clan that is in a country that is currently living in peace. So in the past, greenbone warriors, or warriors that have the ability to harness the power of jade, they have been valued because they are soldiers. They fight for their country. But now in the modern world, that's not really needed anymore. It is more about politics, about how to work with the government, how to create policies that really improve the lives of their people, their clan. So this is not a book about good people. But in this book, we find out that there is a new drug that has entered the country. Now, this drug gives the people, regular people, the ability to harness the power of jade. Now, this is proving to be problematic because it is also highly addictive and destructive. So I know that the way that I describe this book isn't really sexy. Honestly, it's so hard to describe this book in a way that will make people want to read it. But I'm telling you, this book has really good character development. The way that the characters evolve over time and how their evolution is affected by politics, by family, by events that happen is just amazing. Like, it is so well written, so well thought of. Like, every single thing that happens in this book happens for a reason. There is no filler in this book, and this book is brutal in a sense that, yes, obviously it's like clans fighting against each other, so there's gonna be a lot of brutal scenes in that way, but brutal in a sense that no one is safe. This is not a book where there is a plot armor for the protagonist. It's kind of like 4D chess. Everything that happens in this book is part of this bigger thing, and everything that happens affects something else later down the line. Not in this book, maybe in the next book. And I just find that all of that interconnectedness is so compelling, and I cannot put this book down. I don't know if I sold this book to you, but honestly, if you trust my recommendations, I highly recommend Jade City. And again, if you don't like it, don't tell me. That is Jade City by Fonda Lee. There you have it. Those are all the books that I highly recommend if you are looking for a story that will get you over that reading slump and make you fall in love with reading all over again. Let me know in the comments if you found a book that you love, or if you're interested in picking up any of the books that I talked about. And yeah, I hope that you like this recommendation video. Please be nice. I think this is the first time that I'm doing a proper recommendation video, so I'm a little bit like fragile. I hope that you like my recommendations, and I will see you in the next video.